I learned a term, I think it's called third culture kid. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but third culture kid is basically where you are not 100% American and you're not 100% African or 100% Nigerian in my case. You are kind of this like blended third culture mix of the two. So I've had this identity issue my whole life. I wasn't really fitting in with my American friends entirely because I still had that very strong sense of if you do wrong, if you do anything, it will send you back to Nigeria. But then I also wasn't fully Nigerian. I would get called Oyibo and like Ajibo and all these other types of, oh, she's from abroad. So I was sort of in this in-between third culture where I didn't fully fit in either bucket. And it did quite a number on me identity-wise, but the older I got, the more I started developing my own interests and focusing on what I wanted to contribute to Nigerian society. I left Nigeria when I was about 3 months old. Short, there was we were under military dictatorship at the time, and it wasn't an ideal environment for us to be raised. So my mother um, took me and my sisters, and we left. We were in the UK for 6 years before my mom won the visa lottery to come to America. And so I was raised in America. I did first grade all the way to my bachelor's degree in the US before I continued and did other things. So after my bachelor's degree, I did my master's in Geneva, Switzerland, and my educational background is international relations and political science. And then I did international law and human rights in Geneva, Switzerland. Before I moved to Nigeria in 2014, I was not interested in living in Nigeria. I'm pretty sure, you guys as Africans, you might have had the same threat that I had. If you don't do your work, if you don't go to school, if you don't get good grades, they will send you to Africa, and it wasn't appealing. In fact, it was the scariest thing that you could possibly be threatened with, right? Because at that point, they're threatening you with, the disciplinary system. And in my head, I was going to be there fetching water and, cleaning and being treated like a house girl. I was mortified of that entire idea. So going back to Nigeria was like, no, please, anything but Nigeria up until 2012, when my mom was like, okay, I know that I've painted this picture of Nigeria as this like scary place to be, but it's actually a vibe. So let me start taking you back for Christmas, for the holidays. And so I think I did my first Christmas in Nigeria in like 2012, 2011. I think it was 2012. And so I was in Lagos, I was in Abuja, and I was like, this is this is not what I thought it was. We stayed in a hotel, we went to visit family, we had barbecues, we had weddings, traditional weddings, white weddings. We had a really good time. And I was like, wait a second, you taught me my whole life that this place was like, this, again, it was like a threat. It was a punishment, basically. And I actually, as a teenager, I guess, into my adulthood, I was actually seeing a completely different side of it. And again, because I'm interested in international relations and political science, even though I'm coming back for Christmas and we're just turning up and having a good time, I started actually developing an interest in our political landscape, our socioeconomic issues, challenges, and started thinking about potential ways that I could contribute to the society. After I completed my master's in 2014, I decided to complete my national youth service. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but Nigeria has this sort of mandatory national youth service that every graduate is meant to undertake. So it's 1 year of service where you're posted to a state. You for I think it's 3 weeks. Yeah, go to camp for 3 weeks, and you basically spend a year serving your fatherland, is what we call it. And I did. So I did my youth service year in 2014. I did my passing out ceremony. We call it passing out ceremony in 2015. And no, was it 2015? Yes, I did my passing out ceremony in 2015. And from that point on, I was interested and invested in Nigeria and its socioeconomic issues. Once again, my background is international relations, political science. So I already had the frame of mind of how can I contribute? How can I give back? How can I be part of this ecosystem and understand ways that I can impact the lives of Nigerians as a Nigerian, especially from the diaspora.
That makes sense, especially that third culture thing. That's been repeated multiple times on this show. One of our first guests She's Liberian. That's Llewellyn's cousin. She has a fashion brand, and she talked about the same thing growing up in Cobb County, but identifying as like African, and she's a little fair skinned, so it's like she was catching hell from both sides of you're not really American, you're African, and I'm sure you got made fun of
Yeah.
by being African because kids love to roast. Like kids gonna roast, they call you the African booty scratcher. They gonna hit you with the clicks. They gonna do all of that, and your mama walk around naked and live in all of that.
Why does
So
your food smell like that? Yeah.
yeah, it's like you catch hell from both sides, but now we're in this moment where African culture is embraced, and
Yeah.
particularly Black Americans, diaspora, everybody's embracing it. So that kind of we're on the back end of that. People are at least more open to exploring the different cultures, and I think that's good. It's needed. It's long overdue. But I can understand just that whole point of having that identity crisis and feeling like you don't fit into either side.
Yeah.
So, Shanae, when you got to Nigeria and you planted roots, again, I because I'm talking to you as somebody who also kind of knows you. I know where your mind is at. A lot of times, you're like, okay, let me see how I can, in the words of John Lewis, how I can cause some good trouble. Let me see what I can shake up around here. So, what were some of the things that made you want to say, all right, I want to tap into that? And how did you do it? I know like that I'm asking that question because from my point of view, that was me when I first went to Liberia. My mind was like, okay, I need to tap into this and that. So I'm assuming great minds think alike that it's probably something that happened with you as well.
Okay. Wow. Man, these questions. There's a lot here. So I'm gonna say something, and I really wish I could quote her correctly, but I'll summarize what she said. In 2020, I went to a conference. It's the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And one of the sessions I attended, there was this South African woman, phenomenal woman, and she said something that resonated with me to this day. So she pretty much was, I think, running for a local government position in her township in South Africa. And she pretty much told me about the struggle that she encountered as a woman running in her township, and there were so many stereotypes and issues and challenges that she faced as a woman, a young woman especially. But what she said was like she did the grunt work, and that lended credibility to everything she was pursuing in her legislative seat. She did the grunt work in the sense that she rolled up her sleeves and she went into the communities. She learned the language. She learned the the struggles at the very, very grassroots level, at the local level. She began to speak in in a way that they understood, that she understood their challenges. She did the grunt work. She showed up at the at the council meetings and at the town hall meetings and at the community meetings and women's meetings and things like that in villages and rural communities. She did the grunt work. So when she was able to contest for her legislative seat, she stood on the authority of, I've done the work. I'm saying that because in part of my experience when I moved back to Nigeria for about 7 years, I kept quiet and absorbed a lot of information. I didn't want to come into Nigeria with all of these preconceived ideas of what Nigeria is, because again, I hadn't lived there. I didn't grow up there. I grew up in America for the most part. So I didn't want to come in with my naivete and just allow my naivete to direct my path, because that was gonna Lagos will humble you. Okay, it humbled me. So I didn't want to come into Nigeria with my naivete alone and try to operate based on that. So I instead came into Nigeria and I rolled up my sleeves. I did the grunt work. I volunteered with local nonprofit organizations my entire time. Every Saturday, I was in a different community. I was in Apapa, I was in Idiaraba, I was in communities up and down Ikorodu. I was everywhere I could be every single week. And I did my very best to learn about the challenges of those respective communities and see ways we could support them. So I volunteered with an organization which I have so much love and respect for, called the Lagos Food Bank Initiative. And each Saturday, they pretty much prepare to serve a particular community. They now have a nutrition program which helps basically bring awareness to food insecurity and the nutrition challenges that are leading to infant mortality and things like that. So that grunt work of rolling up my sleeves, keeping my mouth shut, and learning for as long as I needed to understand the context and the environment that I'm in. And I found that that was important because when I was doing my master's in Geneva, Switzerland, I felt like a lot of the international organizations, especially those in Geneva, are so disconnected from the communities that they're meant to serve or that they are serving. And I was really worried about me becoming one of those same people sitting in a desk in Geneva, basically drafting international laws or standards or frameworks based on context that I don't have a full understanding of. So I wanted to make a very concerted effort to be present in the communities that I wanted to understand, and that would lend credibility, and that would allow me to speak authoritatively on certain topics in Nigeria. So I can speak confidently on the challenges in some of these communities in Lagos that I was able to serve. I can speak confidently on some of the challenges, especially in the southeast state that I'm from, Imo State, because I spent the time in those communities and gathering all that information to support my the trajectory that I'm on. So I would say, and I would offer this as advice, anyone, especially those of us who are privileged enough to be in the diaspora and who are looking to come back, when you do come back, I encourage you, whatever time you're able to, spend time in whatever community you're interested in, roll up your sleeves, do the grunt work, and that will give you the credibility. Don't worry about being third culture. Don't worry about them calling you foreigner or whatever. As long as you are there and present, they'll be like, you know what? This guy or this girl is actually serious about this.